Hi guys, I'm Mrs. Boshnack, and I'm here from the Harborfields Public Library Children's Room, and today we're going to be making no-sew fleece tied kits, blankets, and these are going to be donated to children in hospitals through Project Linus. So what you did so far, hopefully, is you picked up your kit, which is 2 pieces of fabric. And the other things that you're going to be needing are a pair of scissors. I have sewing scissors. If you don't have sewing scissors, they just have to be scissors that are strong enough to be able to cut fabric. This is where you might want to have an adult around when you're doing the cutting, just to make sure everybody's safe. And the other thing that you need is a yardstick. This is a yardstick, or a ruler is okay too. I like the yardstick because it'll help me later when I'm cutting my corners and cutting my tassels, okay? So here we go. First thing you're gonna do is open up your blanket kit and take away the ribbon, and you'll notice that there's 2 of them here, and each of them is folded so that the right side, the soft side, is sticking out. So this is the soft side, and this is the right side, or the soft side. So when you lay it on the table, which is what I did right over here, I made sure that this is the fuzzy side on top, and this is the fuzzy side on the bottom. Because after you cut it and then you tie all the ties together, it'll make one soft blanket. You don't want to put the rough side on the outside. You want it to be nice and cozy. So once you open up your blankets, you're going to be laying them on a flat surface. And I put 2 tables together. If you have 2 tables like this, it's great. If not, find some place where you won't, like I would not do this on a bed, because if you put it on a bed and you go to cut, you might cut your blanket. You don't want to do that. You really should be on a surface like a table that where you won't do any damage to the surface, okay? So what I did was I first laid down the first blanket, and then I laid the other one on top, and I tried to make the edges as even as I can. So if you notice over here, it's not quite even, but over there, over here, it is even. So what you have to do, which is kind of, actually I call it raking, with your hands you're going to be raking this down so that all of the ripples are out. You want to make sure it's nice and smooth, and you keep going all the way around. And when you rake, it's so funny because it actually does move the blanket. So now that I'm seeing I have a lot of fabric here, and another thing you can do is if you grab the bottom layer on both sides and you kind of pull it, and you go all the way down, it's straightening out any creases. So the last thing I always do before I start cutting is make sure that I have no ripples in my blanket, okay? And I try to get it as even as I can. And I think that's gonna be the best I can do. These blankets are not cut perfectly, as you can see. So that's where now you're gonna be using your scissor to make sure that we kind of neaten it up a little bit, okay? So since this is going off the edge, I'm just gonna quickly move over to the other side and just kind of scoot it down a little bit. Make sure this is all smooth here. Good, and I'm gonna pull it so that you can see what I'm doing, okay? Coming back again. All right, so I wanted to show you the next step. First thing, that side is all nice and even. This side really isn't. So I'm gonna take a pair of my scissors and I'm gonna go right along the edge here and get rid of the extra green. I'm gonna take nice long cuts, and I'm keeping my scissor perpendicular to the table. I'm not cutting like this. I'm not cutting like this, because if you do that, then what happens is you're not cutting straight. So you wanna make sure that you cut like that, okay? Perpendicular, straight up and down, almost like chopping wood, okay? So I'm gonna keep cutting, and I'm carefully, and if it's not perfect, it's okay. If it's a little bit longer in one area, it's okay. I'm actually gonna leave that little bit, it's not that much. Once we start making our tassels, this is garbage. Once we start making our tassels, you won't even notice it, okay? The next thing that you have to do, now that it's all nice and pretty even, is you're going to cut away this edge. This is called the selvage edge. And if you notice, it's a round edge that has, It looks very unfinished, as you can see. See, that's probably a good way you could see, okay? You really don't want that to be part of your tassel. So you're gonna get rid of that selvage edge on both the top and the bottom. And if you notice how they're rolls, this makes sense, right? When you have a selvage, the right side has the roll that rolls up, like a wave up, and this one would be rolling down because it's on the bottom. You see that? So we're gonna cut away I'm gonna cut away the green selvage first. So I'm just lifting that up a little bit. And all I'm gonna do is take a pair of my scissors and I'm just gonna cut about maybe a ½ inch away from the edge. And I'm gonna do this on this side. And you notice how I'm holding this on this side? It helps me to keep it nice and tight. Now I'm gonna move a little closer. And I keep cutting about a ½ inch from the edge. That gets rid of the selvage. And it gets rid of the little dots that you were looking at, and those little threads that you were looking at, okay? You want it to look nice. Remember, we're donating this to charity. We want it to look nice, okay? So that's also scrap, that's gonna be garbage. And now the next thing I have to do is cut along here. Well, as you can see, it's kind of hard to see exactly where to cut. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm kind of gonna fold it so that it's right along that edge. And this can be a little tricky. Take your time, okay? Because you want it to be pretty close. And here I'm probably gonna stop and keep cutting after a while. So I'm gonna start here, and I'm just gonna cut. And what I'm trying to do, and actually, now that I know where I am, now I can kind of lay it down a little because I could see. I move a little at a time, and I'm folding it, but I'm looking right here that I could see it below. You see how I could see it? I'm just making sure. And you could cut them both at the same time. The problem is, sometimes when there's this much that you have to trim, I'm actually showing you one that's one of the tougher ones. Yours might not need that much trim. And you could always go back and trim again. But again, I keep my bottom scissor right along the edge of the green so that I know that I'm cutting close to where I need to be. And as you can see I'm pretty close, okay? And just gonna keep going until I get to the corner. And there you go. Not bad. That really worked well. Okay, so now this is garbage. I sometimes use this to tie up my blanket afterwards instead of throwing it in the garbage. I've even had kids braid this and make decorations with it, but for me, it's probably gonna go in the garbage unless I could find another use for it, okay? Now you have to cut your corners. And the reason why we have to cut our corners is that if we don't cut the corners, then you'll end up with a round blanket instead of a rectangle one, and you need a rectangle one. So you're gonna need your ruler or yardstick, and you're going to be measuring on the bottom, okay? You're gonna measure 5 inches from the edge. So that's my 5 inches. I'm gonna take my scissor, and I'm gonna make a little snip, and this doesn't have to be perfect, okay? And now I'm gonna go up 5 inches from this side, and I'm gonna make a little snip, okay? And now what I'm gonna do, and I sometimes keep my ruler right there with me to make sure that my lines are going straight, I lay it right up against the edge of the blanket so I know where to go. And this is where my other cut is, right here. Actually, on this, it's actually nice. You can actually see it's on the bottom of that stripe. So I'm gonna go all the way up to the bottom of the stripe, straight up. Cut, cut, cut. And now I'm gonna go across. If you didn't have a stripe, then you just use the ruler to help you. You're gonna do this on every corner. Another little trick, now that I already have a square, I can use this as my template. Watch. I'm gonna lay this right here. I'm just gonna take the one. Look at that. Easy peasy. You don't even need your ruler again because you already have something that'll help you to cut the square. Okay, now I have 2 more, okay? I'm gonna follow and do the same thing on the other sides. I'm not gonna take the time to show you that right now, but make sure you do 1, 2, 3, 4 corners, and you get all of these out. This is also extra, okay? You don't need it for the blanket. Now we're gonna cut our strips. So this is where you need the ruler, and what I do is I lay a yardstick right alongside this cut. And I put it, if you notice, right on the edge there so that I know, let me see if I can do it that way. No, it doesn't work that way, but that's okay, this works. So what you're going to do is you want to cut 1-inch strips, okay? So I see where my number 1 is. I'm aiming for my number 1, and I'm going to go straight, 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 stop. And I stop right by the yardstick. Now I'm going to go to number 2. 1, 2, 3. It doesn't matter how many cuts you make to get there, but you want to make sure that they're nice long cuts, okay? Now I'm going to do the 3rd one, and you're going to keep doing this until, and I find it's nice having the ruler. After a while, you're going to get the hang of it. And what did you notice? I'm cutting the top and the bottom at the same time. That's really, really important, okay? Make sure that when you're cutting them at the same time. If you don't do that, then you have to go back. It's very hard to match it up. So you're going to keep doing that all the way across. Okay, keep cutting 1 inch apart. And guess what? After you do this, all the way on this side, you can then do it along that side, across the top, and across this way too. I always first, after I do all the cutting, the first thing I do is I tie my corners. And the reason why I tie my corners, and I'll just cut that strip real quick on that side, so I could do the same thing there. See, on this side, you can use the ruler where the number is right there, but I'm just gonna cut it so I could show you. All right, so use your ruler to help you, and this way you know exactly where you have to finish your cut, okay? So I tie, after I cut all of these strips all the way to the end, and I go all the way to the end and all the way around the blanket. Then I go back and I take 1 from one corner, the 2 from the 2 corners, 1 from one side and 1 from the other side, and I knot them. The reason I do that is because then it stabilizes the blanket. If for some reason you have to go eat dinner or you have to go somewhere, it can get shifted and then all of your cuts can get moved. This helps to keep it stationary, and it'll be a little easier when you go back to it, okay? So I'm gonna take the top and the bottom, and I'm gonna make a knot. So I turn it like this, and I pull it through. I don't pull too tight. I'm gonna do the same thing again. I don't even move my hands. I'm gonna go around and make a knot and pull it through. Okay, so that's 1, and I'm gonna do this side too. Remember, top and bottom. You're not tying across. You're taking the top and the bottom that you cut together, okay? Remember to do that step because otherwise you're not gonna have a blanket that's going to be held together. It'll end up falling apart. You want it to be the top and the bottom of each one. You're tying the top blanket to the bottom blanket. Tie a knot and a second knot. And if you get used to doing this, what it's going to look like after you keep going, you get into a pattern of going 1 and 2 and pull. And I don't even pull that tight. These are going to get washed before they get donated, and that tightens the knots. So please don't pull them too tight, and also don't pull them where it's pulling the fabric, because if it pulls the fabric, it's going to distort the rectangle. So top and bottom, 1 knot, another knot and pull, and I'm going to keep going like that, and you're going to find after a while you're going to get really comfortable doing this, and it's going to look all finished when it's all done. So there you go, there's some. I'm going to continue on this side, and I would continue all the way around. So this is your no-sew fleece blanket. These are going to be donated through Project Linus, either to Camp Good Grief, which is a bereavement camp, or to the local hospitals for kids in hospitals. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed making your blanket. Have fun, guys. Bye-bye.